Hello, Eric of SPIRITY Cocktails. We are episode 7 of the Brand Spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us. How's your day going today?
It's going fantastic. It's a busy day today because we just launched our equity crowdfunding campaign on Seed Invest at 1 o'clock this afternoon. So it's been a pretty crazy day.
Oh, wow. Perfect timing. So I just want to, before we get into the interview, I do want to talk about the agency I started. They're the sponsor of the show. The agency is Brands Connect. That's brands with a Z, BRANDZ. And we focus on taking the brands that are already there, focusing on the brands and doing the marketing, focusing on crafting custom marketing campaigns that tailor specifically to the brand, because we feel our experience is that every brand needs a custom marketing campaign. Without further ado, let's get right into this interview. I already asked you how your day was. So I will ask you number one, if you could define your brand in a sentence or two, how would you do that?
I love this question. So SPIRITY Cocktails are real non-alcoholic cocktails crafted with spirits distilled from tea for an authentic adult-like sipping experience without alcohol. That's my brand proposition.
I love it. Can you repeat that so I can take it all in?
Real cocktails crafted with spirits distilled from tea for an authentic adult-like sipping experience without alcohol.
Wow, you really packed a punch with all those adjectives.
I've said that a couple of times so far.
Yeah, you have your brand very clear. I love it. I should see it, but I don't see that often enough.
There, yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, I can unpack it for you a little bit.
Yeah, let's unpack it. But first, before we unpack it, I am curious about the reason why you paused and stressed when you said real. That seemed to be a very big point that you really wanted the audience to resonate with. And I guess before that, I didn't even welcome the audience. Our audience is on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live. We're normally on Facebook. We had a little bit of tech issues today to getting on Facebook. So I guess in the future. And then it's repurposed as an audio podcast on all the audio platforms. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite Google Podcasts, and your favorite podcast player. Let's talk about the real.
Yeah, no, I do stress the word real. I think it's an important part of what we're doing. The SPIRITY Cocktails are real cocktails because they're crafted with a real distilled spirit, and that's what makes SPIRITY Cocktails unique. It's all of our cocktails are crafted with a healthy pour of our spirits distilled from tea, which is a hydrosol distillation of tea. We take tea leaves and we pack them into a basket and we process superheated steam through them. And then we condense the spirit that comes out the other end into a real spirit. And, all of our cocktails are made from that spirit. And we're the only ready-to-drink canned cocktail made with a real spirit that doesn't contain alcohol. And we were the first non-alcoholic cocktail to be awarded by the World Spirits Competition in 2020 in San Francisco. And we did that competing with the alcoholic products alongside other ready-to-drink canned cocktails. So we're pretty proud of that. So the real is important for me. I mean, I think a lot of folks consider these non-alcoholic cocktails as mocktails. So we really like to distinguish ourselves as being a real cocktail. We call ourselves a cocktail because we are a cocktail brand. And that's what makes SPIRITY Cocktails unique.
That's very cool. So I just want to take the audience along the journey and try to explain everything. So normally we go into an alcohol shop, we look at the section, it says spirit. I've always assumed spirit is alcohol. It's a type of alcohol just because of the way I've seen it categorized. It sounds like you have a spirit that's non-alcoholic. What is a spirit?
That's a great question. So there's a whole legal definition around a distilled spirit. The Code of Federal Regulations does define a distilled spirit, and that's why we call it spirits distilled from tea. We don't refer to it as a distilled spirit. because the Code of Federal Regulations does have a standard of identity for a distilled spirit, and it does have to it has to be contain ethanol, and ours does not. So we were very careful when we describe spirits distilled from teas. We don't confuse it with a distilled spirit. So there is a little bit of, I guess we're trying to associate with the product, and it is a real spirit because it's going through the same distillation process. It's all being condensed. The only thing that we're taking here is the water component, and not in a traditional spirit when it's distilled, okay, an alcoholic spirit, I should say, you're fermenting some type of sugar, and you're creating kind of a beer or a wort, right? And that contains some level of alcohol, 10% alcohol or something like that, depending on what you're doing. You take that wort and you're going to boil it, and what comes off of it is the alcohol. That's what goes into a distillation column to be condensed back into a liquid form, and that's where you get alcohol. We're just doing it without having alcohol in that base, and it's the steam that's coming up. We're distilling at a higher temperature, and we're collecting that steam, and the condensate from that steam is our spirits distilled from tea. And that allows, the steams goes up, and we don't brew tea. We actually push the steam through tea leaves, which picks up some of the congeners in the tea. And it's a very unique tasting spirit. And it's not like a high potency spirit like you would think with alcohol, but it is a very unique herbaceous flavor profile that by itself, you wouldn't want to drink it. I think you'd be very confused. But when we mix it in our cocktails and we add our juices, sugar, a little acid, you get something that isn't necessarily intended to replicate alcohol, but it provides an experience that is similar to drinking an alcoholic beverage. And I learned about this after almost 20 years in the wine and spirits business. I spent a little time as a winemaker in Northern California, and I've tasted alcohol. I have my own personal story with alcohol, but I've been an alcohol consumer my entire life, and I have a very good understanding of the flavor profiles present in raw alcohol when you don't add wood and you don't add other things to it like you do when you're drinking a traditional spirit. And that flavor profile is highly bitter. And a lot of folks take the alcohol. So there's a sensation when you drink alcohol that gives it a burning sensation in your throat, that feeling. People confuse that experience of the burn with the taste. The taste is actually highly bitter, right? So bitterness is a key component to spirity cocktails. And when you taste it, there is a late hitting bitter note that resonates in your throat. And that's why we call it our adult-like sipping experience. And that's what makes spirity cocktails unique.
So it's actually the bitterness that people are looking forward to, and that makes it that brings it that authentic adult beverage that you were talking about before.
Yeah, I think, we don't like to talk about it as bitter because that's kind of a turnoff to folks. And I think, and some people find the bitterness offensive. But just like you have the same kind of reaction, like eating chicken wings, right? You eat spicy food, right? People you bite it and you're like, wow, that's hot. And it's really uncomfortable. But the best way to satisfy the pain that you're going through, the discomfort, is to have more. That's why people love chicken wings. They love spicy food, because the way you satisfy that, that's just burning is have another bite, right? Same thing goes when you're drinking a cocktail or any alcoholic beverage. There's a discomfort associated with the consumption moment. And that's what makes it sippable, right? You taste it, you sip it, you kind of go through it, and you're like, I want another sip to satisfy it. It's a very similar process that your mind goes through. It's called agriflavors. It's aggravating. And a lot of folks don't like to talk about alcohol this way because it's not the greatest way to describe an alcoholic beverage. But what I'm trying to get at is the experience that the consumer has drinking spirity cocktails and what makes it very unique. And that bitterness and that late hitting bitterness provides an experience for someone who is an alcohol consumer. They'll connect with it, and they can understand it.
So you're really after the sensation, the sensation of what alcohol gives the person in terms of consumption, and giving that to them without the alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm going to press a little bit harder on this, unless you're about to say something.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to press a little bit harder on this. Is there something that your product is missing that alcohol has, or do you feel like you're a complete alcohol replacement?
It's tough. I don't like to say that we are it's not alcohol. You cannot replicate the alcohol experience. And I'm really careful with when we talk about this. And I have a margarita cocktail that doesn't contain tequila. Is it going to taste like a boozy tequila-based margarita? No, it doesn't. But it provides a unique margarita experience that's a little bit different, that's reminiscent of a margarita, and provides a little bit of satisfaction for folks that are looking for something unique. So I don't like to say, hey, we're here to replicate tequila or gin or any of the other products, because that's not necessarily what we've done. We've provided a unique sipping experience that's reminiscent of an adult beverage, is a better way of saying it. So people, when they like to compare it to alcohol, I look at it, I'm like, well, I don't necessarily know that it's really a comparison to alcohol. But it does have a sensation of it being an adult beverage and something that you wouldn't drink for breakfast, right? For example. And another thing I would say is that there's, when particularly in the canned cocktail space and in hard seltzers, people will taste my product up against a leading, I won't say their name, but a leading peach base. I had somebody taste my apricot sour next to the leading vodka flavored soda, peach flavored soda, or canned cocktail. And they enjoy drinking mine better because it doesn't have the alcohol kind of burn to it. And they still feel like they're getting an adult beverage, but it's not necessarily alcohol. Because a lot of folks honestly don't like the taste of alcohol. That's a learned behavior. You give a child alcohol, and what's the first thing they do is they say, ugh, doesn't taste good. We learn to enjoy that over time as a learned behavior. And what we've been able to do is provide a similar experience without having that taste.
Cool. Wow. Yeah. You really took us through the journey. A lot about making the product, a little bit about your origin story, which we'll get into soon, and really describing the brand very well. I think we covered most of the points. Did we miss anything on the brand?
I can talk all day about spirity cocktails. So whatever questions you got, I'd love to talk about spirity cocktails.
Okay. So just to recap, it's really about a real experience, a real spirits experience, an authentic adult experience of tasting this. I use the word bitter hesitantly because it sounds like it's not just bitter for the sake of bitterness, but really as a flavor profile. And as an attraction, it's something that you really have to feel. It's not like you're going into a bar of bitterness. You're biting into a bar of bitterness. You're enjoying a cocktail that has an element of bitterness that provokes the flavor, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah. And if I could go back and just kind of reiterate my proposition again as being a real cocktail crafted with spirits distilled from tea, for an authentic adult-like sipping experience without alcohol. Does that all make sense now?
Yeah, you said it. I think this is the third time I'm finally getting it. It's just there's a lot there, so to remember it all.
That's great. I love having this conversation.
That's amazing. Now I want to go. That's your brand. I want to get into your origin story, but before that, that's a nice high level brand. What are the different products that you currently have, or different product categories and or products?
Yeah, so we have a single line of cocktails, canned, ready-to-drink cocktails, but we have 4 cocktails. We have a margarita. We call them our mindful margarita, our mindful Negroni, our apricot sour, our mindful apricot sour, and our mindful mule, which is kind of like a Moscow Mule ginger product. So all 4 of those cocktails, they come in, just happen to have one here, a 250 ml ready to drink can. They're all carbonated, so they have kind of a hard seltzer kind of vibe to them. And we've just increased the carbonation level on this product to help with that kind of hard seltzer drinking from the can type proposition that people enjoy. Yeah, and they're currently sold in 4 packs. I have one here. We sell 4 at a time. They're only sold on Amazon and through our website.
Cool. Your packaging is beautiful, which we'll get into soon. Before that, I do want to ask: did you launch all 4 flavors at the same time, or did you slowly release them?
We launched. So thanks. These are great questions. Yeah, I love them. So we launched the margarita, the mule, and the Negroni at the same time initially. The apricot sour came second, or it came as an add-on. And when you look at the 5 most popular ordered cocktails in the bar industry, and on sale it's called, you'll see that the Moscow Mule and the margarita are 2 of the top 5. The Negroni is a little bit of a wild card. A lot of folks don't know what a Negroni is, and even if they do recognize it as a cocktail, they don't understand what it tastes like. We introduced that as a little bit of a wild card to showcase the versatility of our spirits distilled from tea, as well as to really solidify the brand as a cocktail brand. We wanted people to be a little bit curious about what a Negroni is and to really clarify that it is a cocktail. And the great thing about Negronis is there's a ton of different interpretation of Negroni out there. If you go to a bartender, they're going to make it all in different ways. And you have people that are very passionate about how their Negroni is made. Ours is very unique, and it's our own rendition of it. The apricot sour was added as a 4th component to explore people interested in a little bit more sweetness and a little bit more fruitiness, and try to understand where people were interested. Because our mindful margarita was 25 calories, so it's more of a lime forward. It's not a sweet margarita. It's lime forward, and it's got its bitter characteristics. The mule was kind of a balanced sweet, but it's got ginger. It's very familiar tasting for folks. The Negroni is very unfamiliar, so you either like it or you're just like, wow, you've never tasted anything like it. I can guarantee you. Nobody's put that in a can before. What we've done. And the apricot sour was my mother's favorite cocktail, believe it or not. And I can remember her when I was a kid sipping on these things. It's typically made with apricot brandy and sour mix, kind of similar to a whiskey sour, but made with traditionally with apricot brandy. And we were thinking about, hey, it's summertime, apricots. Nobody's really doing anything with apricot puree in the beverage space. And we said, wow, we could really do something cool that would honor my mom's favorite cocktail and solve all those challenges I just described. So we launched that about 6 months into the brand.
Cool. Wow. That's thank you for taking us along that journey. I'm sure we'll get more into that. It sounds like the flavors was part of your story of launching. So we'll get into that when we launch, about why you chose which flavor. In the meantime, I see some LinkedIn comments coming in, and we love LinkedIn comments because it brings engagement and helps the show out. For some reason, it's just saying LinkedIn user. Let's see if I click it. It still says that. It still says that. So true. This was 6:05, so I don't remember. But I guess it was one of the things you said, Eric, that resonated with this LinkedIn user. The ritual of drinking is ingrained. Yeah, I don't know why. It sounds like we're having lots of technical problems, that it's not showing the actual user. We're using a third-party software. So that's that. Yeah, I guess we'll go back. Let's get back into the interview. Let's see if I can actually see who. Let me see if I can check LinkedIn to see if I can actually give a proper recognition. 1 second. Oh. Whoops. Here we go. Oh, Judy says, so true. It was Judy Chu. I can't pronounce it. Chu. I won't try. Chutsetsa. I can't try. But we appreciate your comments. We appreciate you looking at it and tuning into the show. So let's get back into the interview. We learned a lot about the brand. We started getting into the different products. Eric alluded to this, to being in the industry for 20 years, in the actual alcohol industry for many, many years. Now I want to get back to the origin story. How long ago did you launch this product or this brand?
We launched in 2020.
2020. What month, if I may ask?
April.
So right after COVID.
Feels like forever ago, but yeah, it was in the midst of the pandemic, and we had, our original strategy was to go to market through Amazon. Use as an opportunity to Amazon's a fairly low cost model and it's just me that runs the company, so I don't have a large organization. And we launched on Amazon as a way to get to a lot of people and get a lot of feedback. It's really important. And we've learned a lot from that. So it's been great. And that's where our fundraising that I mentioned we launched today will hopefully propel us into our next stage, which is to go into brick and mortar retail.
So in April 2020 is when you launched. I assume does that mean you already had product by that time, or that's when you started product development?
Oh no, that's when I had product. That's when the product became for sale. Yeah, the process took me about a year to work through of getting the brand established. I actually started with a bottled spirit, a different brand. It was a totally different brand. The brand was called Shukra, which is, and it was a whole different concept. It was using tea spirit like we're using now, and it was a lemongrass flavored mixer based on an Asian brand. And in fact, when we were going through that, that's when I discovered the relationship between the Asian elephant and tea plantations. If you look at our product, you'll see on our packaging, we have an icon of the Asian elephant. And that is to honor, the stories that I heard as I was looking through tea sourcing, and primarily in India, Indonesia, China. They all have similar issues with the Asian elephants that come in and they not terrorize, but the elephants just doing their thing, innocent. They go through these tea plantations and these tea gardens, and they cause a lot of destruction. The elephants and they've been using these paths for forever. And all of a sudden there's a tea plantation there. So now they use it to gather, and they go in and they just tear up plants. They fall into irrigation ditches that are new, and these baby elephants can't get out of these things and they end up dying inside of these. And it's an endangered, Asian elephants are endangered. And then also the elephants are getting into things like fertilizers and pesticides and things that are all there. So I learned about that story and I said, hey, we've got a unique product. How do we honor the tea? How do we honor a good symbol for mindfulness and strength? It really resonated with me. And I said, wow, we've got to use the elephant icon in some way. And Shukra was built around that story, going back to that. Shukra, we decided that it was a little complicated for a consumer because the teeth, it's a unique taste and it would really require a lot of training on how to use it. And it would really be a long haul for us to be able to market that product. And we saw what was going on in RTD cocktails and ready to drink cocktails. Sorry, I use that term RTD. And I said, hey, let's just go right into a ready to drink cocktail. And that's where we started the brand. And we made it a little more easier to understand by calling it SPIRITY, right? Made it, spirits distilled from tea. It just kind of comes off your tongue when you say it 100 times. And it's an easier proposition for a consumer to understand. They kind of get a little confused on, well, it's a distilled spirit, but it doesn't contain alcohol. But they do understand that it comes from tea. Tea has a rich history of being an alcohol replacement throughout various times in history. When people have gone through moderation, going back to Victorian times, tea was served at parties alongside alcohol for folks that weren't drinking. And they would go as far as having a tea station with a bartender, a tea tender, that would actually prepare teas for you in different ways, similar to what you would with a cocktail. And it has all the ritual that they go through and the fanfare of creating these teas for folks. And they would sip on them because they were bitter. And, people would use that as an alcohol replacement. So tea was considered an adult beverage for many years prior to becoming a breakfast product. And it still is in some parts of the world. So, all those things connected with the elephant story and the sourcing, my passion for adult beverage, the whole distillation and how we came up with that, which, by the way, I did in my backyard. I created this thing for the first time. That's where Spirity Cocktails kind of came together in terms of how it unfolded.
Wow, so it sounds like there were a lot of moving pieces that all essentially just unfolded together at different times, but to form the pieces of the puzzle. I do want to get a little bit into Shukra. It sounds like that was that may have looked like a failure, so to speak, but it sounds like that's what launched Spirity. Really, the Spirity is essentially the version 2 of Shukra in a certain sense. It's something that's probably more ready for the market, market driven, etc. What was Shukra? What was the main premise of Shukra aside from the Asian tea?
It would have been sold as a bottled spirit. So if you do look in our category in this non-alcoholic spirit space, you will see folks that are doing a bottled spirit, and it was going to be in that space
with alcohol.
Without alcohol, yeah, it would just be a mixer per se. So you could mix it.
So but it's not distilled.
It would still be distilled in the same way that we created our spirits distilled from tea. That's the same base that we would use for that. But it again, and I think your confusion, I'm like, well, what do you mean? Is exactly why we paused on that and didn't pursue it. Another reason for it is I walked into a grocery store one day and I'm walking down through the grocery aisle trying to figure out where, and this was California, so you could buy spirits in the grocery store. And I'm walking through the spirit section. I'm like, people that are looking for these type of products aren't going to be shopping in the spirit section. And then I go over and there's like this Martinelli, the older non-alcoholic cider, and you had a couple of non-alcoholic beers, and I'm like, it just doesn't fit in any of these places. And I just had a really hard time understanding how consumers were going to find it, what are they going to do with it when they get it? Like, you have to train them. This is how you mix it with and what you mix it with, and you don't drink it straight. You have to, it gets really complicated and expensive to educate consumers on a product like that.
So shukra, just to get it clear, I'm just having a hard time making the distinction. Was shukra the not ready? Was the mixer as opposed to the ready to drink option?
Correct. Yeah, that was an original brand concept that we shelved.
Got you. And then you turned it into, instead of making it a mixer, you wanted to do ready to drink. Did you ever do production and or bring that to market?
No. Small scale stuff that I did in my backyard, but never made it production.
Got you.
And doing a bottled spirit in glass, that's a whole different world than putting a canned beverage together, which I had to learn the hard way. And by the way, my experience was in alcohol, and I have experience in putting products together and manufacturing different products. But when they contain alcohol, it's a whole different ballgame. There's a regulatory component to it. And in a lot of ways, it's a little bit easier because you don't have a lot of the FDA oversight, food safety stuff. And when you get into the non-alcoholic space, you're working with a whole different group of people, right? That different manufacturers, they have a whole different set of standards and ways they operate. They also have a very different scale. So, you're in the alcohol industry and you want to make a canned cocktail, you can make reasonably 1,000-gallon batch of it and have literally a truck that will come to your facility, and it's a semi truck and it has a canning line in it, right? And they'll fill your product, and you can fill a pallet worth of product, and you could be on your way as a brand getting into the ready to drink cocktail space. When you go into the non-alcoholic side, you're dealing with folks that are traditionally used to working with things like 7-Up, and Pepsi, right? Or canned beverages that are mass scale. So their operations, and they're not interested in dealing with somebody who's getting started. It's very challenging to do. And navigating all of that was part of that first year of the development and getting where we were.
That's interesting. Is there just a higher profit margin in the alcohol space? Because I would imagine if the profit margin is the same, then it would be a great place for people to compete.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different cost structure to the alcohol business and there's the non-alcoholic business for sure. I guess the best way I could say it is that the way the industry has developed, when you're working with small wineries, there's a lot of folks out there that they have capabilities, whether wineries or distillers. You got small little microbrewers and distillers and wineries that have capabilities to fill products, and they're doing it on a relatively small scale. But when you go outside of that and you go into the non-alcoholic side of things, there's not a whole lot of little manufacturers out there that will do it. And that's what makes it super challenging to get started. But people are figuring it out, and I'm starting to see more products come on. I think we were the first to label our product as a non-alcoholic cocktail. To my knowledge, I think first product in the world, as far as I know, that was labeled as a non-alcoholic cocktail. Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Thank you so much for taking us through that journey of your first product as the spirit, just the spirit non-ready to drink, and then eventually pivoting or optimizing to the ready to drink option. Let's go back a little bit earlier. What inspired you to start a brand? And this type of brand, this category brand, you could do a million other things. You could work for corporate America. And then even within your decision to make a brand on your own, why did you choose this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had always had an interest in someday managing my own brand, and whether it was a wine product or a spirit product. because I worked, in 2001, I moved out to California to join the wine industry, and I worked for a major producer of wine and spirits, primarily doing operations. I did a variety of roles over 18 years, and I did spend a sabbatical as a winemaker, and I got a winemaking certificate from UC Davis. So I learned a little bit about the technical production of alcohol. Also had a lot of experience in procurement, quality management. I have a degree in packaging science, so I did a lot of technical stuff around packaging, and that really helped me kind of see how this could all be done. These pieces could be put together when it comes to producing the tea, when it comes to manufacturing in a canned beverage in a small scale, etc. So aside from that, so like I worked for a large producer. I was also a heavy drinker the whole time. So I started drinking alcohol, my undergraduate in college probably is when I started drinking heavily. And, through my 20s and into my 30s, I started to drink daily. And I had access to great wines and spirits whenever I wanted them. And I was working with people. It was adult beverages was my life. I mean, I got up in the morning and we talked about it, and we worked on it. And then afterwards we drank it. And that's just part of being in that industry. And I, developed a deep passion for wine and spirits. But, after 15 years of pretty heavy drinking, I decided that, in 2018, I said, I just can't do this anymore. My body, the aging process was accelerating. I wasn't feeling good about myself personally. My self-esteem was down. My motivation was down. All the things I used to love just felt a little dull. And I think a lot of folks who have a strong relationship with alcohol would clearly understand what I'm talking about. And I finally came around to the fact that, hey, I can't drink anymore. And in 2018, I went completely sober. Haven't had a drink since. And that period was really challenging for me. I mean, it took me a long time to give up alcohol because of the love I had for it. And it's not just as a drinker, but like as for the business, for the industry, right? For the things that it does to bring people together. There's a lot of really great things that alcohol does for society. I know that people don't like me to say this all the time, but like the adult social occasion is a very unique opportunity. There's no children around, right? It's your friends. It's about having fun. It's out of the ordinary. It's normal. And these occasions occur throughout. They can happen at different times of the day. They're typically in the evening. They're typically in the times when you may dress differently. You approach things differently. You have a different, you eat different things. You spend different amounts of money than you normally would. All of a sudden, all these unique things come together, and I describe it as the adult social occasion. And it's something that I had a pretty good grasp on and what people wanted. It's challenging to describe, but the adult social occasion is very unique. But here at the same time, I had this passion for adult beverage, but then I also had this newfound passion for sober living, because it clarified my life in a lot of things, and it opened up some doors for me that had closed years and years ago. When I gave up alcohol, I immediately noticed, myself physically losing weight. My skin cleared up. I was sleeping better. A more positive attitude. So many things, and motivation to do things that I hadn't done in years all of a sudden struck me. So here I am, passion for adult beverage, passion for sober living. I could see what was going on in the industry, and I said, this is my time to go do it on my own. And I left a very comfortable 18-year career with a big company to go out on my own and by myself. And I risked it all, to do this. And I still am. It's been a very challenging kind of learning curve, and thinking what you're doing, and thinking that experience gets you there. Doesn't. I'll be the first. If you're considering leaving your corporate job because you think you understand how a business operates, I'll tell you, it's very different when it's you, and it's very different when it's small and you're starting from the bottom. There's no legs up. So I think people put way too much into experience, because I've got a lot of experience and I learn new stuff every day. And the things that I thought I knew are just thrown out the window day one. So yeah. So does that help with my story?
Yeah, I love it. We learned a lot about your brand mission, a lot about your actual brand. You know, you described it, I think, 3 different times. So that was great. I can't say I remember the entire sentence completely.
Let me refresh you for it. They're real cocktails crafted with spirits distilled from tea for an authentic, adult-like sipping experience without alcohol.
All right. Whenever I need it, I'll just press play.
There you go.
And I do love that you shared with us your journey of what motivated you to start. It sounds like you had a lot of skills and competence within and confidence within the industry, which you've now shared that you're now questioning that a little bit. That's what it sounds like. I wouldn't say questioning in an unhealthy way, but really just explaining the challenges of it, the learning process of it. And you really value what alcohol, the positive traits that alcohol can do. You've really valued what sobriety has brought to your life. And it sounds like you said, like, I want to go on my own. It's time for me to go on my own. I understand the benefits of alcohol. I don't hate alcohol. I love alcohol. I love the alcohol business. I love what it can do. It's also had some detrimental effects on my life. That's what I'm hearing from you, that it's had some detrimental effects, and sobriety has been so amazing. So let me match the two and see what I can do to provide the solution for those pain points. Did I get it?
You got it. And you know, the mission that I finally came around to, and I've actually trademarked this, is rethinking the adult social occasion. And that is about everything I just described, and understanding, you know, adult beverage in a different way, and really looking at that time that we're all together, and it's hard to explain, but you know what I'm talking about. The adult social occasion is a very unique moment where people come together and celebrate, they relax, they do a lot of things that involve alcohol. But I think that we can have that same occasion with same experiences, but just in a healthier way. And I'm not anti-alcohol at all. In fact, I think it's important for this to work together. And in fact, 77% of the people who drink non-alcoholic adult beverages also consume alcohol. So the idea that these products are for sober people, I think, is a little bit of a dated concept. You know, back when it was just O'Doul's and Beck's, you know, non-alcoholic beers, it was viewed as, hey, these products are for alcoholics, recovering people who still want to drink, but they can't, right? Now you're seeing products coming out, you know, Spirity Cocktails is just one of 100 great products that are out there that folks are, you know, who are regular alcohol drinkers still enjoy, you know, a Spirity Cocktail or a non-alcoholic beer.
Thanks. Wow, that was amazing, that part. Now I want to get into both the product selection, the product launching, but before that, I think it's usually intertwined with how you brought it to market. So I want to focus on, it sounds like 2020, you finished production of whatever flavors you produced, and that was when you were bringing it to market. What were the flavors that you originally launched with? I know you mentioned it before. If you could repeat that for me and for the audience. And what were the first 1 or 2 things that you did to bring it to market?
So again, the first 3 of the 4 cocktails that we released was the Margarita, the Mule, and the Negroni. And we followed on with the Apricot Sour about 6 or 7 months later, somewhere around there, 6 to 8 months later, as a way to expand the portfolio. We launched it on Amazon which was, a little bit lucky at the time because we were going into the pandemic, and we had originally planned that Amazon was going to be our go-to-market strategy. Amazon is it's a large channel, but in our specific niche at the time, and which I still think is probably the most comprehensive marketplace for products like ours. Amazon's also a great place for consumers who are looking for something unusual that they can't get anywhere else. They typically will go to Amazon to see if it's available, and they'll purchase it. Amazon also has an amazing advertising platform that you can reach very specific consumers who are purchasing your products, your competitors' products, and similar products and likes and interests. And it's probably the best consumer data on the planet right now. So we looked at that as an opportunity to say, hey, let's launch these little, at the time they're $14.99, $15 4-packs that people can order one at a time. There's not a whole lot of profit in that. There's none at all, actually. But it gets the product into a lot of people's hands. And we've tasted over, I think, 17,000 people now, for a brand that's in its infancy. That's a lot of people. In comparison, if I was going to go into a retail market and I was going to start going into local grocery stores, which is the ways that a lot of these brands start, or independent liquor stores or independent grocers, going out and, trying to sample people, you might get 50 people a day. And how many people are going to purchase the product? You might be selling through 6 or 7 units per month per store, right? It gets really complicated and it's expensive. It's necessary to build a brand, but in contrast with the amount of resources that I had and what I thought we could do with Amazon. And by the way, that we just happened to hit the pandemic right in the middle of it, right? So we all know what happened with online sales on the pandemic. That turned out to be a really great move for us, a great way to introduce the product. And we learned a ton. I learned, having product moving, right, and selling, and little things like, and I talked earlier about the learnings of running a small business and all the stuff that comes with it. Being able to get product to Amazon, little things like getting it shipped and labeled properly so Amazon doesn't throw it away. And, how do you deal with all the little stuff that multiple production runs that come and hey, you just produced 4 flavors and one of them's out and, you can't meet the minimums on the one. And how do you deal with all that? All those things are learnings that anybody who does what I'm doing is going to go through. And Amazon really gave us an opportunity to learn all of that. And, I've got gaps because I haven't gone into retail. And I think that's our next big challenge. But we did learn how to operate. I learned how to market things. I learned pay-per-click advertising on the Amazon platform. I learned how to make product changes on the fly. We've made multiple improvements to the product. We've had packaging not show up, and we've had to deal with, all those things. So as a new brand, having a channel, it may not be big, but having a channel to focus in and operate in helped me kind of learn how to do this. And now we've moved operations to the other side of the country. We've got a new package. We've got a new production process, got all new suppliers, whole new supply chain. And we are ready to rock and roll with scaling this thing up. So I'm grateful for the Amazon experience. And Amazon, because it's such a self-serve platform, it gave me personally the opportunity. I didn't have to go hire a bunch of agencies and 6 salespeople. It gave me an opportunity to work in front of this computer and learn how to operate a business. Now, I've got a long way to go, we'll admit. But that piece of it is something that I'm really grateful for learning.
Well, I have so many questions, but we'll have to do one at a time.
This is fun. I love doing this stuff.
So
like I said, I can talk about it all day long.
That's amazing. I do like it that that normally I hear everybody talking about omni-channel, but what you did was the opposite. You focused on one channel in the beginning, really mastered that channel, tried to initially probably break even, get the products in people's hands. Eventually, I assume the goal is to make a profit. That's always the goal. That's just a fascinating thing, and I'm also curious to learn how has that marketing evolved. Before that, I do want to take time to admire your packaging. How did that come to be? Because it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you very much.
Let's describe it for our audio listeners. It has a nice elephant. The words are very, very bold. It says "Spirity Cocktails," and then it says in very bold letters with the color "Mindful Margarita," a little bit smaller, non-alcoholic cocktail, and then 0.5% ABV, which I always assumed meant alcohol. And we could get into that a little bit, but even non-alcoholic, this still means there's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of alcohol, just like kombucha and everything else. Just didn't want to throw everybody off track. So now that I described the product, let's talk about you. If there's anything else that I missed in the description, and how you came to create that, who created that for you, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, I have an amazing partnership with an agency called Matterful Brands, and they helped with the design of this. There was a couple of different agencies that I had take a different look, and it came through a study of a competitive set. And also a lot of cues from non-alcoholic beer. So you'll see, just using, I guess I could start for a couple different things. One thing is I believe, particularly in a crowded category like a beverage, like you go through the vitamin aisle, right? And it's super crowded. You got different brands and different pieces. And what I think that I learned by studying kind of that vitamin aisle is that the brands that really resonated with me and stood out are the ones that I first can see exactly what it is. I need to be able to understand. There's a lot of canned beverages out there, and I need to first, as a consumer, see and understand exactly what it is. So highlighting the mindful margarita in the hierarchy of how you perceive the package was the very first thing we wanted to do. Mindful margarita, it shows that one, it's an adult beverage. Mindful makes it a little bit, interesting that it's different, right? You can't say that with alcohol, right? So all of a sudden it pops out as being a different type of margarita. The next thing that was important is to clarify very clearly that it was a non-alcoholic cocktail. Right. So when I think of the hierarchy, mindful margarita, describe the product right away. Hit them again, the second tier description, a non-alcoholic cocktail. And then you'll notice that the Spirity component, the brand, is something that is actually minimized because it's lower in the hierarchy. We're not competing on that. At the time, we were the only non-alcoholic cocktail, and we're still one of the leading ones in can in this format. So we've said, hey, let's put the brand development on hold, and let's really highlight the fact that we're a non-alcoholic margarita. And that was the strategy behind that. So the brand component you're going to see change over time as the Spirity brand becomes more recognizable. It's going to start with the elephant. The elephant will become more prominent in our packaging and our messaging. The elephant story and the tea sourcing story will be built out as part of our brand development. The Spirity name at this point doesn't have any connection with to anybody. But if they can understand that it's a non-alcoholic cocktail and they can start to recognize the elephant, the Spirity brand will come. And I think the Spirity piece is separate. I also, as a founder, there is we got this little caricature of me, which I love. This is the COVID haircut and COVID beard. And, we want to describe what the product was the best we can. The 0.5% ABV is something that, we get a lot of pushback on. I believe that every adult beverage should have an alcohol by volume declaration, very clear. Consumers are used to seeing that in adult beverage. It's required to be on the bottom third of the label, or if in the case of a back label, you can put it on the back label, the alcohol percentage. But it's also very common in non-alcoholic beer. And so if you're labeling product, there are laws out there around non-alcoholic beer that if you're using the term non-alcoholic beer, near beer, it does need to be accompanied with 0.5% alcohol or less than 0.5% alcohol statement somewhere on the package. It's becoming less prominent now, but it used to be very clear that non-alcoholic beer always had 0.5% ABV. So we stole kind of this little box from somebody else in the category, as a cue that fits some of the way the package is designed, the weighting of the weighting of the ratios between the dark and the light and all that. The weighting of it is actually copied from an alcoholic brand. Not copied, but we did our research. Yeah, inspired by another brand. So, that's why when you see it, you're like, I hope that description of everything that we did, and I just laid that out for you. I've never really explained that to anybody, the thinking behind it all, but it's all very deliberate, and all of that stuff, the weight, how it looks together, how it looks. I wish I had other ones without having to get up, but they all look nice together.
If you want, you could show them to us. So that's up to you.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I really like the amount of thought, the deliberate thought that you put into it. Is that something you came up with? Your agency came up with? You did it together? How was that process like?
I think we did it together. I was very insistent on the hierarchy, and I had to fight folks for that. I think that I have a unique, like I said, I've looked at a lot of alcoholic beverage labels throughout my career. I've seen it in every category of alcohol, the alcohol business. I see what works. I see what works for mass brands, and I see what works for little niche luxury brands, and they're very different. And I'm not trying to be a niche luxury brand. So I did kind of look towards the strategy for how to lay that out, the hierarchy of how it looks visually. You'll see we followed the same hierarchy on our 4-packs as well. We also, made a point to describe the spirits, they're crafted with spirits distilled from tea, and a little bit about it on the side there with a proprietary icon that we have. QR codes that'll take folks to our website, Amazon. You don't see that on all products, right? We put that front and center. Having other SKUs to be able to communicate what it is and how it's used. So that's kind of like, the story of the brand. And the box that this is in, to my knowledge, is the first canned beverage 4-pack that came in a corrugated box. When I first started ordering product off of Amazon, and I started with I think it was like Red Bull, they had similar can sizes in 4-packs, and I would order it off Amazon, and it would show up just destroyed, mangled, 4 loose cans in a bag. And they were using a chipboard box, which is traditionally you go into a store and you buy any beverage, it's kind of got that flimsy feel to it. That's a retail package. It's designed to be put on a pallet and picked by a person and put on a shelf, and that's the extent of the handling that goes into it. Amazon's a different animal. You're going to be sending this through the mail. It needs to be able to survive. And even this robust package doesn't survive Amazon's 100% of the time. But we did invest, and it's very expensive to do that for the purpose of making sure the consumer gets a great delivered experience and all of this content to be able for them to learn about the product through the package, which I'm a firm believer in.
I love it. I really feel like the packaging really, really conveys the value. It's not just about experience, but really the value. They know exactly what they're getting when they get it. So I really, really like that approach. And I think as we head into this recession, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, I think people are going to be more and more focused on value as opposed to just the feelings of the brand. Obviously, that's important too. But I think the value, the feeling of value, is what people are going to be comforted with. So that's very cool. I do want to get. I am curious how you went about finding this agency that did your branding, because I always find that process is very, very interesting.
I've worked with a couple of them. I started out with one, and I was introduced. I was introduced to the founder of this agency through a mutual friend, and that's where it started. So he's been a great partner. He actually has equity in the business now. He's on the board. He's involved in the business. I give him credit for everything that we talked about. He has made come to life, and everything visually that you see around the brand is I give credit to Manifold Brands for doing it. They're great partners, and we've been working with them since the beginning. So, yeah, I mean, it is tough, right? There's a lot of folks out there that I get solicitations every day from marketing and brand building agencies with their own designers. They all have a different spin on things. As a founder, you just got to control it. You got to know what you want, and you just need to make sure that, you realize early in this game that the only people that make money in this business are all the different agencies that you work with. So you have to keep it lean. And Amazon, I keep going back and saying that opportunity that it created really helped teach me that. I did this, I'm the sole employee of Spirity Cocktails. I have lots of agency help that helps me with this stuff. But you learn pretty fast who's willing to work with you at the right scale, and avoiding the folks if they come at you and say, hey, we do this for PG or P&G or Starbucks or whatever, and you realize that at different phases of your growth, you work with different types of people. And I never worked with my whole career. I worked in corporate America. The folks that I dealt with were the big agencies type folks. And I was used to writing, I didn't write them personally, but I've seen creative briefs that were written 10 pages long that would explain exactly what you're looking for and all that stuff. In the startup world, you're working with scrappy people that aren't flashy. They don't have flashy resumes, but they got a lot of grit, and they're willing to do it, and they're fighting for survival. And just like I am, every day is you're going broke every day. And you finding the right people that are willing to work with you and be part of it, and just staying with those people and growing with them. And that's been the biggest learning for me in this whole experience, is that I had to get my head around how to work with people without just paying them, because you can get work done if you just pay somebody to do it. But that's not what's going to get you ahead. It's finding the people that will work with you and share your passion and your risk. Like, they need to do things for free, just like you are as a founder. So
I mean, you're not doing it for free. You're doing it for the potential upside.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to see that, when you're in the trenches. And it's funny that you say that. I think when I started out, I had a lot of thinking about that upside, the exit, and all that comes. And I have investors now, and I'm 100% committed to driving their investment in me and their faith in me and giving everybody a return. But what keeps me going every morning when I get up is the fact that I love what I'm doing. I make a lot less money now. I work harder. I work with less people. Like, I'm not in a big company anymore and shuffling around and doing different things. But I love what I'm doing, and it really is awakened me. As a lot of folks take this approach early in their career, and I'm doing it late. I think I missed something. I just stayed with one company for a long time, and now it's a fresh start for me. And you're starting at the bottom, very, very bottom. And there's a hierarchy in the beverage business. I'm learning that is very clear. And you're at the bottom, and there's no getting around it either. There's no favors. There's no connections. There's nothing. You just got to work through it.
Wow. Thank you so much for taking us along that part of your journey. I feel like we're slowly unraveling all the pieces together. Now I'm curious, what's your current, actually let's talk about one more thing. I don't normally ask this, but you mentioned that you changed your supply chain. How have been supply chain, where do you get your supply, and how have supply chain issues affected your business or production?
So my supply comes through a co-packer, and their business is mixing, blending, filling, and stuff like that. I buy all the stuff that I need, and I have it shipped to them, and I own the inventory, and I have them put it together for me. I literally go out on site, and they package it up, and they send it out for me. It's literally like materials come in, they blend it up, they mix it together, they put it in the can, and then they want it out, right? So that's their business to do it. So I don't have my own facility that I operate out of.
Where are those raw goods coming from? And any supply chain issue in any places that have supply chain and logistical issues?
So the co-packer is in the southeast of the U.S. And I get juices from, I don't know, 20 ingredients that go in across all 4 SKUs, right? It comes from all over the place. Cans are really challenging to get. Boxes can be really expensive if you don't do it right? You mess something up and you can go broke, like literally. And that's another point for anybody interested in doing this business. Like, in a big company, you kind of do iterations. You trial something, you test it, right? And then you fix it and you change it and you get another version and you keep working through it, right? And there's you just kind of do it. When you're doing it on your own, a lot of times you only get one shot at it, right? You're putting all your capital on the line just to get it out the door. And if it doesn't work, you're out of business. And that hurts. That hurts really bad. I haven't had any catastrophic things happen yet. I have problems like everybody else, but you can literally go broke trying to produce a batch of product. You can literally put it in a can, the next day find out that it's all spoiled, and the co-packer, now you gotta, whose fault is it? Is it your ingredients, or is it the co-packer's process? You can try to figure that out. And by the way, that's going to cost you lawyer fees that you can't afford. And you literally, that could end your business. So I think my experience in operations and getting products produced has helped me navigate that. I like to think that's something that's come in play. Challenges all over. Early in the pandemic, cans were real rare, real difficult to get your hands on. I was smart enough to sign a contract on cans early on. I could see that coming. That's loosened up. Citric acid is a product, a component of all of our products. There's scarcity in that, so it's hard to find right now. It's very expensive. It's just all part of running any type of manufacturing business. Oh, and by the way, what I've learned recently this week is the carbon dioxide shortage. You hear about this carbon dioxide?
No, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, so there's like a global carbon dioxide gas, right, which is used in all beverages, and brewers use a lot of it. It's used for a lot of different purposes in manufacturing because it preserves product, it pushes oxygen away from product. It's carbonation, right? The bubbles that you have in the product are from carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide gas right now is very, very challenging. And it's actually putting a couple breweries, there's a big brewery in Massachusetts that just shut their operation down because they can't get carbon dioxide. So the big guys have all got these long-term contracts and they've got supplies, but the little guys are scrambling right now. They're trying to figure that out. How long that lasts, who knows?
All right, so we will wrap it up, but at some point. But there are still 2 more things that we do need to get to.
Okay.
First, I'm curious about your current go-to-market strategy, and then we'll get into your history of funding and the equity crowdfunding campaign. But first, let's start with what's your current? I know you spoke about literally all you had to do was list it on Amazon. Then you mastered the Amazon platform, did all the Amazon marketing. Seeing the way you put deliberate thought into the branding of the package, I'm sure you put deliberate thought into every aspect of that Amazon listing. So I'm sure about that. But what are you currently doing in terms of to bring it to market, and how has that evolved since you started?
Yeah, so we're not in any brick and mortar retail at the moment. And that's part of what this round of funding is about. I think in order to make that move, I want to make sure we're properly capitalized. It's going to require more than just me to do that. So the business has evolved and it's reached a point where it's not going to grow anymore on what we've done. I need to get it into retail. So the strategy, and I've learned also that strategy and how it actually plays out are 2 very different things. But the strategy right now is to focus on, there are 19 states in the country that sell spirit-based cocktails in grocery alongside alcoholic beer. Okay, there's every state has its own laws associated to how. You go to California, you can go to the grocery store and you can buy beer, you can buy wine, you can buy spirits. In Montana, you go to a grocery store, you can buy beer. You got to go to a liquor store to buy a canned hard seltzer or anything else that contains spirits or wine, right? So focusing on the 19 states where those products are merchandised together. So that gives us an opportunity to be in the beer and canned cocktail category and have it together and have people shopping for those products and be introduced to ours. That'd be the first cut. So that cuts down states. The next kind of filter that I'd put it through is the account should have, some usable history with a craft non-alcoholic beer. And I haven't talked about this. A lot of our thesis on, the growth of this category is around beer, non-alcoholic beer. Non-alcoholic beer accounts for 75% of non-alcoholic adult beverages being sold right now. So working in that beer category is extremely important to us. And we think a lot of consumers eventually will come from that category. So we want to be in that area alongside of it. So I hope that answers the questions on go-to-market. Otherwise, we are social influencers. We're exploring partnerships in, food service. There's a lot of different channels that we can operate in, but we'll likely on this raise focus on 2 geographic cities, major cities. And put fractional salespeople in those areas to help focus on the brand. So similar to my approach on Amazon, I'm not trying to be everywhere to everything. I think the value in the brand is going to come from being well positioned in the right places, with the right consumers, the right accounts. And those are the folks we're going after.
Oh, wow, you answered both of those questions at once. But I do want to dive a little bit deeper into your go-to-market approach. It does sound like you're looking to bring fractional salespeople. Is that in addition to a distributor, or are you able to self-distribute?
No, we won't self-distribute. A distributor is something that comes with retail. Like in
Retail demand.
Business, you have to have a distributor. So everybody will say the first thing you got to do is go out and find a distributor, right? But not in the non-alcoholic business. what the distributor is going to want is they're going to want you to say, hey, you give me 35 retail accounts first that I can do business with, and then we'll talk about distribution of your product. My philosophy is to focus on the retailers themselves. They will guide us into how to work with the distributors that work for them. And that's the right way to think of it. Customer first, right? If I went to a major retailer, the first question that I would ask is, who would you like me to work with to distribute the product for you, right? That's how you drive and select distribution, not going to a distributor and asking them to sell your product, because they won't do it for you. That's not their business. Their business is to deliver product to stores. That's how they make money. So I think, I hopefully have a little bit of a leg up on understanding that dynamic and focusing on the retail and focusing on the retail buyer, those relationships, and allowing them to guide us through how they would like to get the product in their stores, to me, is how you grow distribution.
Cool. I really like that aspect. You're essentially going to the buyer who's responsible to select the goods and that process. And you're saying, I have a great product. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do to make it easy for you to make a decision to add 100 of them to your cart.
Yeah. Now, executing all that is very challenging. And I'm sure if anybody else in consumer products knows that, like, it's easy for me to say that, but like, the reality is it is really, really tough. There's so many other products that are out there. The retailers are all confused about, my little 0.5 ABV alcohol statement, right? They're confused over the laws. They're confused about where the consumers are coming from and what the consumer motivations are. They're behind years. So it's going to take a lot of work to educate the retailers and help them understand the category and who the real buyers are. But it'll come.
In terms of getting into stores, do you see getting on the shelves as the thing you need to do to drive sales, or do you now need to push marketing to get people to buy at those stores?
Yeah, I mean, being you have to have being on the shelf is the first step before you start really marketing the product. Because if you're not at the point of purchase, you can do all the marketing you want, and if they can't find the product when they're buying what they want, that's what you have to do first. So I don't think there's a one or the other. It's both. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be, like I said, we're focusing on trying to be in the right type of places. I would love to be next to the non-alcoholic beer. I think that's where our opportunity is, but retailers may see it differently, and we're willing to work with them on that.
Now, I did hear, before we get a little bit more to the crowdfunding campaign, I did hear there are a couple non-alcoholic stores popping up around the country. Are you able to service them or not just yet?
Yes. In fact, there's one large one that we're speaking with now. I think that a lot of those places are really focused on the higher value bottled spirits. They want to be a bottle shop. I think some of them are going to be successful. I think when large retailers start to put their own sections in with the same selection, those are going to be tough businesses to operate. The value in liquor stores has a lot to do with the regulations in the state or local regulations, because they kind of control who has what, where. And if you're part of that, you can create a lot of value for it. In our business, that's a little bit different, because some of those restrictions aren't there. Even though we want to be placed with them, it's not a have to be. If I was and I love the folks that are out there trying to build these bottle shops and non-alcoholic beverage stores, but they need to be cognizant of these categories are going to, when they're successful, Kroger is going to put that category in. When they're successful, CVS is going to have their own section, and BevMo and all the other places that are there. And if you really believe, like I do, that the non-alcoholic adult beverage buyer, like I said in the beginning, 77% of them consume alcohol, right? There is a portion of them that don't. Those don't people are going to shop in the places that there's no alcohol. That's my opinion, right? But the rest of them are buying on their normal grocery strip, or when they're buying alcohol and they want to buy something alongside it. Those are the people that we're after. That's where I see a bigger and broader market opportunity, is to be in that alcohol space. So that's a long-winded answer for the bottle shop concept. We'll see. I think it's all good. It's all great. It's there. In fact, I have to say, a lot of the bottle shop. There's a big one out in New York. There's a couple online folks that are doing this non-alcoholic business. They're doing amazing things at curating products and moving the category forward. And they should get all the credit for doing that. In this early stage, they're the ones that are organizing all of us, right? They're putting us together and they're making a thing out of it. And that's super important. And what they're doing is very, very special and very important for the business. And I don't want to overlook that. I just have to think about, like, hey, I'm in a canned beverage, the value and for what I'm moving needs to come in volume. And that's how I see it being closer to the alcohol space.
Have you had a little bit more on the marketing strategy? Have you had influencers come to you asking for product? Is that something you're doing? Have you gone to them? I know that's a big thing today. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. We don't pay the big influencers. I don't see, it depends on who it would be, but the value.
Do you give free product though?
Oh yeah. So if you're an influencer and you're looking, if you got great creative skills, we take a lot of value in the photography. I'm less interested in your following, and I'm more interested in you being able to present the brand and make digital content for us. So if you're out there and you love to make content as an influencer and post and use it, hit us up. I'd be happy to work with you.
All right, creative people on LinkedIn, where that's one of the platforms we're on. You just got an offer to get product to play with, but it better be good because that's going to reflect on me. So take it. He doesn't care about your audience size. He cares about your real audience influence. So that's something else. But it's really the skill. It's really the content creation skills. And do what you want with that information, but make sure, like I said, to reflect good and do really positive work. Now that we really got that out of the way, we've really gone through your journey. I'm curious, what have been your funding rounds up to now, whatever you're comfortable sharing, and a little bit about the launch of this equity crowdfunding campaign. And I love the concept of equity crowdfunding. I've actually been to the first equity crowdfunding summit in LA a couple of years back. It doesn't exist anymore. I don't know why. So I love the concept. I know a lot about the concept, and I do want to break that down a little bit. But before that, I'm curious about like I said, your previous funding rounds and what you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So the previous round I did was a friends and family round. We raised $250,000, small, and it was just to kind of carry us through the last phase of the pandemic. And then this round is our first kind of proper seed round, organized round, and we're doing it with Seed Invest, who's a great outfit. They've got, there's a Reg D and a Reg CF component to it. So we are taking accredited money and crowdfunding money. So we expect to have, a wide range of investors. With the valuation that we put out, I think is very reasonable. It's lower than other brands in our space. We think that, like I said earlier, I think providing a healthy return for the folks that participate early in Spirity Cocktails. I want everybody to be successful, and I'm not trying to be greedy. And I know that I need help. And a fundraising round, I'm realizing, is actually a cry for help, not just for capital. So I want people to get involved that have something that can contribute to the business, that they can work their investment, and we can all be successful, because getting to the end is the only thing that matters. Making it along the way there's zero value in any of these businesses until they get to a potential exit. So yeah, we launched the crowdfunding campaign today, by the way. It's on seedinvest.com. You'll find it under Spirity Cocktails. The terms right now there's swift terms associated to the round. So the first tier, which is the lowest value at 3.2 million valuation cap, will expire on the 17th, which is a week from today. And the valuation will go up to a $4 million valuation is what we agreed to as Seed Invest.
What's the minimum I can invest?
I believe on the CF side, it can be as little as $1,000.
Okay. I'm going to push a little bit, like I said before, on why you chose equity crowdfunding. For our audience, equity crowdfunding is basically in order to invest in companies, you need to be an accredited investor. In my words, it's based on some outdated laws back in the day when there was a lot of scamming going on in Wall Street. So they created a lot of regulations to make sure there weren't unsavory characters taking advantage. Fortunately, those laws have been updated, and they've allowed people to fundraise without accredited investors, meaning I could go on one of these platforms and invest in a specific company, and I own a share of that company. Now, there is a reason why most companies don't do equity crowdfunding, although it's becoming more and more popular. It is usually both more efficient, easier, and you get people who actually know about the business going to VC. So I know you did mention it's a mixed round, and you use the words Reg A. I don't remember the exact words. Those are just technical words to say that a regular person who's not accredited could invest. But why did you choose this route as opposed to the other more traditional route?
I don't know if there is a traditional route anymore. First of all, I will say that the whole fundraising process as a founder, like I walked into this without any idea. I'll be the first person to say, like, I didn't know anything. I don't know. There's a strategy associated to selling equity and value. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't even think about it. I started this business kind of with a lot of my own money to get it going, to just get the product put together. And, I never really considered the whole process, and I didn't know anything, and I still don't. I'm still learning every day on this. It's super complicated and it's scary when you start going. So to answer your question on why crowdfunding, it's an option, right? I think there's a lot of, I believe in the crowdfunding piece, the value, and I can see it already. And I think I didn't do it for this reason, but I've come around to it now that we've started this. I can already see, even today we launched and I see website orders coming in, boom, 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 right? I mean, so that from a marketing perspective, getting it out there, it's great. I just spoke with another founder who just raised, 1.6 million on Seed Invest yesterday. And he said the greatest value in it is he's like, I now have 770 new brand ambassadors. And he's like, I'm going to hire somebody to basically be the investor relations marketing person to go out and mobilize these people to talk about the brand. And now that I have, I'm looking at my board, close to 20 some investors now that have come in prior to the crowdfunding thing. And I'm starting to see now, not all of them, some of them just put their money in and don't know what to do. But some of them work with me every day. They call me and say, hey, have you thought of this? And hey, I got this guy you got to talk to. And, this guy over here is doing this. You should take a look at it, And I'm starting to understand the value of getting more people involved in the investor side. And I would love to have a nice, highly rated, high resource venture capital firm come in and help guide me through all this stuff, and they could have whatever they want. Honestly, they can help us do that. Or better yet, a big company like a Diageo to partner with, or somebody, Constellation Brands, or somebody to step in and help. But those options aren't available for everybody. And, crowdfunding is a great alternative. I think it's a good way to get the brand out there. And also crowdfunding, particularly Seed Invest, and I really gotta hand it to Seed Invest. I looked at a couple different crowdfunding platforms. Seed Invest does all the due diligence that a venture capital firm would do. They put you through a ringer. And you mentioned earlier about the regulations of having small, uneducated investors come in. The value that Seed Invest does is they validate your business so that they're not selling the investment to people who have $1,000 to put in, an uneducated or small investors not used to doing it, that are putting money in an emotional basis into crowdfunding. Seed Invest is protecting them by putting us as a company, me as a company, through independent audits. Fact checking everything. Every communication I put out about the investment has to be reviewed by their compliance team. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it in the background to help protect the investor. I see decks from other companies that get passed around, and I can tell you right now that, if you're not uneducated, but if you're an investor that's not used to working in early stage private equity in these businesses, you need to understand how these businesses work, because doing it without somebody like a Seed Invest on your side, you are putting yourself at risk to being robbed. There's a lot of junk out there. I see decks from companies and I'm like, you got to be kidding me, because I know it's not true. I know it's a lie, or it's misleading, however they do it. And folks like Seed Invest will help protect, because they do the due diligence to make sure that everything is there. So I feel really good. Going through that process has helped me kind of grow as a company. I had to change the spelling of my company with the state of California, just to satisfy, one of the things. And they're all just stuff that kind of needed to get done. And as a one-man show, you don't kind of work on that stuff. The Seed Invest makes sure you're a proper, legitimate business with a good business model, real numbers, and you're not selling a bunch of BS, because it's out there. And the crowdfunding, regulations are there to protect the consumer. And I can see now the value in those. The Reg D investors, these are accredited investors. These are folks that have high net worth, or they're sophisticated investors. They're used to understanding and calling out the things that little companies do to position themselves. They're educated, and they know how to make a good, solid investment, and they know how to call BS. But the little guys don't, right? And when I say little guys, these are everyday people that just want to have a little bit of private equity investment, and they're putting in $1,000, $5,000, whatever. That's a lot of money, and you should be doing that alongside one of these credible crowdfunding platforms that do proper due diligence, that aren't just taking every deal. There's a couple of them a couple big ones out there, take every deal in sight, and they don't ask a lot of questions. I started working with another one. They're just like, yeah, we can, whatever valuation you want. You want to put a $10 million valuation on it, put a $10 million valuation on it, right? Seed Invest wouldn't let us do that. So Seed Invest, probably closer to what we would actually find in the venture valuation is where we ended up with Seed Invest. So I can't say enough about them. They've been a great partner. I've learned a lot about just kind of the whole process. And I feel like my business, as painful as this has been over the last 3 months, putting it on the platform, it's been an amazing growing opportunity for me. And it's really kind of clarified my business.
I love how you really focus on the realness of everything. It started in the beginning of the interview, and it shines through the entire interview, all about the realness and actual value. Do you have a specific go-to-market strategy for this number one, how long is this campaign?
It opened to the public today, and it will close on Seed Invest on September 26th, 7th, 28th. Sorry, I can't remember exactly the date.
So about a month out.
I would say that if folks are interested, they should really consider prior to August 17th, which is next Wednesday. The valuation does go up. We're offering a discount for early investors. It's to help build momentum around the round. It's good for everybody. I also say, as a CF investor, you're out there, it is in your best interest, if you're interested in investing in a company like Spirity Cocktails, it's in everybody's best interest to get the money in early, not late. Don't wait. Creating momentum around the round. You don't want to be somebody, you don't want to invest in a company that can't raise the money. And part of your job as an investor is to drive momentum and create enough that there's enough capital there to really make it work. And, investor behavior is to wait, right? And they want to see what happens, but it works against the best interest of the investment. So I would encourage everybody to, if you're interested in investing, now's the time.
Do you have any specific go-to-market strategy to get more investors, or are you kind of playing it by ear?
I think raising capital is, and like I said, I'm pretty new to it, but I'm starting to see that it is going to be an ongoing process. It's not something that, like, if I have to, go through this, pause my business to focus on capital and then go spend it all and then only to turn around and pause, it's not healthy. And I'm seeing now that, like, hey, I got a round open. We're going to get as much as we can through the Seed Invest path. And then it's going to be my job to continue that, to fill the round, which is a $1 million round. We want to fill that round up, and I want to get that round filled as quickly as we can. And when it's done, I'm going to open another one up. It's always going to be there. And it's a continuous thing. We need lots of cash to make a business like this work.
Cool.
Yeah,
so
strategy-wise is you find investors and you figure it out, because there's no playbook on that, by the way. And anybody tells you there is full of BS. There's no way. I read everything, I study everything, and there's no path. You just got to go figure it out.
Wow. So congrats on launching today. I really hope you have tons of success. I do see that I didn't even get into this, but it's become pretty obvious from this conversation that the path to profit in this business is through investment. That's just the way the production works, the way the distribution works. It's not like you could just build a viable business off just the profits of the actual product. You really, really have to have that income. Now, I do want to ask somewhat of a personal question for dietary concerns. I assume your product is vegan. I'm not vegan, but I am strictly kosher. Are you able to, is that in the works, kosher certification?
Well, we'll put that there. We have the ability to do it. There's a couple, it's literally getting paperwork done. So, it's a matter of doing that. We haven't done it yet. You're not the first person to ask me. And I wish I could launch the brand with all those pieces, but we can't. And, a point to say in that is that, when you look on the alcohol side of things, you don't see kosher, gluten-free, vegan, right? You're starting to see a little organic, you see a little gluten-free popping around, but like a lot of those health claims and certifications either aren't traditional, are uncommon, or illegal in the alcohol business. So putting a lot of that stuff on the label actually kind of takes focus off of our primary, where we're really trying to be, right? So I don't lead with nutrition or food certifications that are very common in the natural food business, right? And that's where a lot of people lead. I mean, they love to put all the little gluten-free, vegan, whatever the certification of the day, non-GMO, all that stuff on their products. But when you compare it and you look in the alcohol business, you don't see that as much. You're seeing more of it now, and we'll kind of mirror that. But what I don't want to do is turn it into something that it's not. It's an adult beverage, and we want to stay true to that.
Cool. Wow. Thank you so much. I will ask you a little bit more. I do want to say, I did mention before, if you're a creative that wants to create stuff, hit Eric up. But more important, even more important for my LinkedIn audience, if you want to invest in this, and I don't need to get into any legal trouble, so I'm doing it with every disclaimer. Much more important, right now the round is open for the next month, and in the next week you get the best evaluation. So I hope I have a couple people on my LinkedIn audience that can be investors. The minimum investment, I believe, is $1,000 through Seed Invest. It's spelled Spirity, SPIRITY. Please do that. Have me in mind. And we will end the show almost. I do want to ask you first. I want to thank all our listeners on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube. And it will be repurposed as a podcast. This show is the Brand Spotlight, all about spotlighting brands. The show will be repurposed as an audio podcast on all the platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We recently got onto Castbox and a host of others, but really wherever you can find your favorite podcast. Eric, any parting words, and where can we find you?
You can find me at, I would highly recommend to go to spiritycocktails.com as a starting point, and you look for us in the non-alcoholic beer section near you. So I just wanted to thank you, Joe, for doing this. It was fantastic. Super fun. I love to talk about Spirity Cocktails. It helps me grow. And the more I talk about and answer these type of questions, I feel like the better I get at it, and I really appreciate these opportunities to talk to folks like you. So anybody has any questions, they can also find me on LinkedIn. You can always shoot me an email or a message through LinkedIn. It's the best way to catch me.
LinkedIn is Eric Knight. That's spelled Eric, ERIC, and Knight, KNIGHT. Thank you so much. Thank you again for listening to episode 7 of the Brand Spotlight.